So, Mr. Blue, you started
Please
off
call me Vida.
Vida.
Yeah.
Vida, you started your illustrious career in the minor leagues at the age of 17.
Turning 18 that July, though.
Describe what your mind was going through leaving home and playing the minor league baseball at the age of 17.
It's been a while, but I would imagine that, when you're that age, that young, you leave home for the first time, you're wondering what's going to happen. Nobody knows. You don't know. The unknown is, and I grew up in a small town in northwest Louisiana, and, coming from the South, I didn't know what I was going to experience as far as getting along with other people, but I was there to play baseball. It now becomes a job. That's what it is for these young men out here now. This is your job now. You're not in high school. You're not in college. You get paid to do this. So you learn to the fact that it is a job. You take at least I did take it a little bit more serious, and I put a lot of time and effort into it. And the reward I got out of it was making it to the big leagues and playing for 17 years.
And after a couple of years, you started your major league career with the Oakland A's at the age of 19 in 1969. What was going through your mind when you finally stepped on the mound at a major league game?
Well, you pursue that goal of making it to the big leagues. They say that once you get there, the toughest thing about going to the big leagues is staying in the big leagues, because there's some kid in AAA that's going to be the next Vida Blue, or the next Reggie Jackson, or the next Barry Bond that's trying to take your job, or the next Willie Mays, And I don't know. I just try to stay focused on doing my job the best of my ability every day. And like I said, it paid. I was on some good teams where we won a championship 3 years in a row in 5 years out of a 5-year run where we won the division. But in between those 5 years, we won the World Series 3 years in a row. So it was something that I was very fortunate to get a chance to do. You think about how many guys that play their whole careers and never make the playoffs, less known. Playing the World Series, late great Ernie Banks, who they always talked about all those years he played with those terrible Cubs teams, and he never made the playoffs. But the Cubs have had some success, and I was actually pulling for them when they did win it, 4 years ago now. But I was pulling for Boston prior to them winning it. But I was lucky to play in the major leagues and accomplish some great things personally. But from a team standpoint, your goal is to win a championship. So I was fortunate enough to be a part of that.
Right. So now, Vida, I'd like to talk to you about a certain stretch of time in September of 1970. You were called back up to the major leagues, and on September 11th, your first start, you threw a one-hitter against the Kansas City Royals, and then 10 days later, you hit the Minnesota Twins on September 21st.
Right.
Describe what was going through your mind during those 10 days and those two starts.
Well, you're trying to impress the manager and the coaches that you do think you belong. I'd had a decent year in AAA. AAA team was in Des Moines, Iowa. I don't know what my record was, but I had a winning record and a winning season. And I played on a great team in AAA, so I was as good as my team was. So I got to give a shout out to the guys that I played with. That made my job a little easier. And I don't know. Again, when I pitched the one hit against Kansas City, I remember the guy that got the one hit, a guy named Pat Kelly, used to play. He was left-handed hitter. Of all things, he used to play for Cleveland. He played for Baltimore Orioles, but he got traded to Kansas City. Real fast outfielder, and some kind of way I made a bad pitch, and it might have been his first or second at bat, got that hit. And then, as you said, 10 days later, I pitched against the Minnesota Twins. I walked a guy named the late Harmon Killebrew, who is in the 500 home run club. So I walked him. I think it was in his second at bat. Otherwise, it would have been a perfect game, but that Minnesota Twins team was a tough bunch of guys. They had Rod Carew. They had Tony Oliva. They had a guy named Zolo Versales that played shortstop. They had a guy named Don Mincher, and but they had a great hitting ball club, and the stars lined up for me, man, to throw a no-hitter. I think it's a combination of luck and skill. So, again, I've gotten a chance to experience and do some great things in baseball, and pitching a no-hitter was one of them.
And so, speaking of when you said about the, taking credit to the manager and the coaches, describe your relationship with the Oakland A's owner, Charlie Finley, during your time with Oakland.
You're running your own interview. Well, he was a self-made millionaire, and most of those guys, if they think it, that means it's right. They're never wrong. But you got to understand that I signed the contract to to play for the Oakland A's, and Mr. Finley is the person that gave me a chance to play Major League Professional Baseball. So I gotta, thank him for that, even though he's been gone from this earth for about 20, maybe 30 years. But yeah, he was a tough person to work for. But I think he wanted to keep you hungry and didn't want you to become complacent as a player. And he always dangled a carrot in front of us to make sure we stayed hungry. But all in all, we all had issues with him. Reggie had some issues with him when it came to money and contracts. There were several players that Catfish Hunter had contractual issues with him, but we got through it. And all I want to do was play baseball, but I want to be happy while I was playing too, though.
I do. Yeah, Mike Ellis. Oh, hi, Mike. Mixed crowd. Yes. Nice.
We got sound effects.
Yes, we do. We got some background noise. All right. So also earlier in your career, it says here that you have an occasional curveball that kept hitters off balance and an above-average changeup, but your signature pitch was a fastball that reached triple digits. How did you develop those pitches over time as you continued your major league career?
I don't know if I threw 100 miles per hour, man. I learned how to throw. I threw all four seamers when I got traded to the National League. My pitching coach over there had me throw two seamers, and I threw more changeups to set up the fastball. But the best pitch in baseball is a fastball, which is strike one. The fact that I threw that hard, I had good genes. I have to thank both of my parents for that. But I don't think I threw in the hundreds. I might have topped out at 95. But it was nice to be able to have control and be able to throw two seamers, which I had the ball, manipulate the ball, and make it tail into lefties. And of course, being a left-handed pitcher, tail away from right-handed hitters. So it was my equalizer when I wanted to go to the outside corner, then set up the pitch, come back inside with a four-seam fastball. But you can have all that ability, but again, the art of pitching is taking the sting out of the hitter's bat, and I learned to do that because I hated backing up third base. Who does,
And speaking of your time with the San Francisco Giants, after you played with Oakland, you had a tenure with the Giants as well as the Kansas City Royals. Describe your time with both those teams.
The time in San Francisco was great. I was the last of the original A's that was on the championship teams to go just across the bay to San Francisco. I was pretty lucky. They say you get traded once or twice in this business. And my first time, I got to stay in the local area. I didn't have to move, didn't have to sell my house or anything. And that was maybe a 5-year run with the not the 49ers, San Francisco Giants, and the Kansas City Royals. I think I was like 29, 30 or something, and they made a blockbuster trade for me to go to Kansas City. Kansas City had a left-handed pitcher a kid was in a car wreck and he broke his neck, and they brought me in to take his place. So I spent a year and a half in Kansas City. Unfortunately, it didn't work out there, but I came back to the Giants and played 3 more years, and I retired in 1986. So that adds up to be 17 years as a major league player. So I had a good run, man. It was. I wish every athlete could experience what I experienced, to be at the top of your game like that, to be in championships, be in all-stars, and the success I had personally, but the success I had as a team player to win those 3 championships in a row. That's something I'll never forget.
Thank you, Mr. Blue, for the very memorable